Aurelia's journey through life began with immense hardship. Abandoned by her birth parents as a baby, she embarked on a tumultuous path, being shuffled from one orphanage to another, enduring a challenging upbringing. Suffering from frequent illnesses throughout her childhood, Aurelia was compelled to toil even as a young child within the confines of those orphanage walls. The weight of her ailments lingered into adulthood, leaving her ill-prepared to navigate the complexities of the outside world. In the ensuing years, Aurelia found herself tirelessly working to scrape together meager earnings, all the while inhabiting a dilapidated shack that offered scant protection. To supplement her income, she reluctantly engaged in encounters with men who sought her company, leaving her feeling unbearably alone and emotionally vacant. Tragically, these experiences led to 3 pregnancies, none of which bore fruit. The arduous physical strain, coupled with her inadequate nourishment and rest, contributed to the heartbreaking loss of each unborn child. Every morning as Aurelia awakened, she grappled with existential questions, pondering the purpose of her existence and contemplating whether life held any significance for her. Yet it was her indomitable spirit and unwavering determination that compelled her to rise each day, believing that she possessed the fortitude to confront whatever fate had in store for her. Through the depths of adversity, Aurelia's resilience flickered, casting a flicker of hope upon her path. Despite the scars she carried, she clung to the belief that her life had meaning, and with unwavering courage, she braved the trials that lay ahead. She wanted to prove to herself more than anyone that she could make it to the end of her life without skipping over the difficult parts. The only thing that she hoped was that all of her suffering wasn't for nothing, and that someday she would be rewarded for her perseverance. As the years passed, Aurelia continued to endure her situation in life. The lines on her face began to become more deep-set and started to show her trials and tribulations, but she continued to push on. Despite being 50 years old, she still felt as if she was a young woman, but she had never given up on the idea of love. She believed that she was not destined to find it in this life, but believed that she would have it in the next life. After deciding this, Aurelia simply went through her day-to-day life, looking for the moment that she could finally be welcomed into the kingdom of heaven, where she might find peace, love, and happiness at last. As Aurelia entered into her old age, she noticed that her life had passed without anything really significant happening in it. The only love that she had found was in the form of her 2 dogs who seemed just as old as her. Though she should have been retired and enjoying the later years of her life comfortably, Aurelia simply didn't have the money to do this, so she was forced to continue working day in and day out. Then after a long and hard day's work, she would go down to the river so that she could clean herself. This was her daily routine until one day everything changed. On this particular day, Aurelia had just finished up another day of hard work and was making her way down to the river in order to wash herself. As she entered into the cold water, she made a misstep and ended up walking into a large mud hole in which she started to sink rapidly. While she panicked at her predicament at first, Aurelia soon came to realize that there was no one around to help her out of the mud, and that there was nothing for her to grab onto to help herself out either. It was at this point that she decided to calm herself down and simply let herself be taken down by the mud. Her 92 years of life had been so hard and fraught with suffering that she simply had no energy left to fight the inevitable. Even though her life had been difficult, Aurelia had never once thought of committing suicide. However, this was nature taking her life, and she deemed that it was okay to let go as it was simply the natural way of things taking course. Just as Aurelia decided to let go, her 2 loyal canine companions appeared. Aurelia was shocked. Her dogs never usually followed her down to the river as they were too scared of the water, but here they were trying to help her out of her predicament. The 2 dogs did not hesitate in running over to Aurelia and wedging themselves underneath her arms to stop her from sinking any further. The old woman was bewildered at their behavior and couldn't help thinking that perhaps it was a sign not to give up. It was at this point that other people from the bridge above started to notice what was happening below. At first, the curious people thought that the 2 dogs were simply trying to eat a dead animal of some kind, but as they got closer, things started to become clearer. They saw the 2 dogs and the elderly woman and at first believed that it was Aurelia, who the canines were trying to devour. However, the moment that the old woman opened her eyes, the crowd around her started to scream from shock. Still believing that the two dogs were attacking the elderly woman, the crowd started to move towards them as if they were going to hurt them. It was at this point that Aurelia knew she had to do something to make sure that her two beloved pups weren't hurt. She somehow found the strength to explain to the people gathered around her that the dogs weren't hurting her, but that they were actually trying to save her life. She told them of how she had fallen into the mud hole and that the more she moved around, the deeper she seemed to sink into the ground. Once the group understood what was happening, they acted immediately. The small group of people, which consisted of around 5 adults, joined together to help pull Aurelia out of the mud. Once she was free and safe, the old woman found that her body was seemingly shutting down on her from the shock of a situation, and she quickly fainted. After spending several days in the local hospital for recovery, Aurelia came to a resolute decision. She would not return to her dilapidated shack or the hardships of her previous life. Instead, she chose to leave the city with her faithful dogs, embarking on a journey on foot, seeking a tranquil place in nature to find her ultimate peace. On the day of her discharge, as Aurelia prepared to set out, she was astonished to find her 2 canines patiently waiting outside the hospital. Despite not being allowed inside, their unwavering love for her brought them as close as possible. Overwhelmed, tears welled up in Aurelia's eyes, realizing the depth of her pup's affection. However, the 2 loyal dogs were not the only ones awaiting her. Several of the compassionate individuals who had aided Aurelia out of the muddy pit stood beside the dogs. They had gathered there with something important to convey. Aurelia, touched by the compassion of her rescuers, was offered the opportunity to live out her remaining years in peace and dignity on a small farm. The other kind-hearted individuals pledged to assist her with groceries and chores. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Aurelia accepted the offer, and that very day she was transported to the farm. In this newfound sanctuary, Aurelia relished the simple pleasures of tending to the house, taking leisurely walks around the farm and reveling in the serenity she had longed for. Accompanied by her faithful canine companions who had saved her life, she embraced the contentment that had eluded her for so long. The bond between Aurelia and her loyal pups deepened as they shared their days on the farm, a place where they found solace and happiness. Forever grateful for their remarkable rescue, Aurelia wondered how she could ever repay their unwavering devotion. What a beautiful story. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. I hope you like this story. Please give us thumbs and consider to share it with your loved ones. Also subscribe and press the bell icon to never miss the update from our channel. Thank you.